The courtroom was buzzing with tension on that humid morning in July 2025 as the trial of billionaire tech mogul Ethan Caldwell entered its third week. Caldwell, the 42-year-old CEO of NextGen Innovations, sat at the defendant's table, his tailored suit crisp but his face pale. He was facing charges of fraud and embezzlement, accused of siphoning millions from his company's funds to finance a lavish lifestyle. The prosecution had painted him as a greedy opportunist, and the evidence, bank records, emails, and whistleblower testimonies, seemed airtight. The media had already convicted him in the court of public opinion, with headlines screaming about his downfall. Across from Caldwell sat his lead attorney, Richard Hargrove, a legal titan known for defending high-profile clients. Hargrove had a reputation for winning unwinnable cases, his sharp wit and commanding presence dominating courtrooms. But today, something was off. Hargrove's jaw was tight, his movements clipped as he shuffled papers. Whispers had been circulating that he and Caldwell had clashed over strategy, with Caldwell insisting on pleading not guilty despite the mounting evidence. Hargrove, it seemed, was at his breaking point. At the back of the courtroom, unnoticed by the reporters craning their necks for a glimpse of Caldwell, stood Evelyn Harris, a 54-year-old black woman who had worked as Caldwell's maid for over a decade. Evelyn was a fixture in his sprawling estate, cleaning, organizing, and keeping the household running smoothly. To the courtroom observers, she was invisible, just another face in the crowd. She wore a simple navy dress, her graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Evelyn had come to the trial every day, sitting quietly, listening to every word. No one asked why she was there. No one thought to. The morning session began with the prosecution calling a key witness, a former NextGen executive who claimed Caldwell had personally ordered the transfer of funds to offshore accounts. The testimony was damning, and Hargrove's cross-examination was uncharacteristically weak, his questions failing to shake the witness's credibility. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Caldwell leaned over to Hargrove, whispering urgently, but Hargrove's response was sharp, his voice low but audible to those nearby. "You're tying my hands, Ethan. I can't work miracles." The judge, a stern woman named Judge Clara Thompson, called for order as the tension in the room grew. Hargrove stood, addressing the court. "Your Honor, I need to confer with my client privately," he said, his voice clipped. Judge Thompson nodded, granting a brief recess. Hargrove and Caldwell stepped into a side room, and the courtroom buzzed with speculation. Reporters scribbled notes, and spectators whispered about what might be happening behind closed doors. When the two men returned, Hargrove's face was a mask of barely contained frustration. He gathered his briefcase, turned to the judge, and said, "Your Honor, I can no longer represent Mr. Caldwell in this matter. I'm withdrawing as counsel, effective immediately." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Reporters exchanged stunned glances, and Caldwell's face went from pale to ashen. Judge Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Hargrove, this is highly irregular. Are you certain?" "Yes, Your Honor," Hargrove said, his tone final. "Irreconcilable differences with my client." Without another word, he walked out, leaving his stunned associates behind. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Caldwell sat frozen, his hands gripping the table. The judge banged her gavel, calling for silence. "Mr. Caldwell, do you have alternate counsel, or will you be representing yourself?" she asked, her voice firm but not unkind. Caldwell opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was a man used to control, to having teams of people solve his problems, but now he was alone, exposed, with the weight of the trial crashing down on him. The prosecution's lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Laura Bennett, leaned back in her chair, a faint smirk on her face. She knew this was a turning point, one that could seal Caldwell's fate. That's when Evelyn Harris stood up. The movement was so unexpected that it took a moment for anyone to notice. She stepped forward from the back of the courtroom, her posture straight, her voice clear and steady. "Your Honor, I'll defend him," she said. The room went silent. Every head turned to look at her. Reporters froze, pens hovering over notebooks. Judge Thompson leaned forward, her eyebrows raised. "Excuse me," she said, her tone a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Who are you, ma'am?" "My name is Evelyn Harris. she said, her voice unwavering. "I've worked for Mr. Caldwell for 12 years. I know him better than anyone in this room, and I know he's not guilty. I'll defend him." A ripple of disbelief spread through the courtroom. Caldwell turned in his seat, staring at Evelyn as if seeing her for the first time. The prosecution team exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard. Bennett stood, addressing the judge. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Ms. Harris is not an attorney. She has no legal standing to represent the defendant." Judge Thompson held up a hand, her eyes still on Evelyn. "Ms. Harris, do you understand what you're saying? Representing someone in a court of law requires legal training and certification. Are you a licensed attorney?" "No, Your Honor," Evelyn said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not a lawyer, but I know the truth about Mr. Caldwell, and I know things about this case that no one else does. I've been in his home, seen his life, heard his conversations. I can speak for him better than anyone who's walked out that door." She nodded toward the exit where Hargrove had disappeared. The courtroom buzzed again, but Judge Thompson silenced it with a sharp look. She studied Evelyn for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Harris, this is highly unusual," she said. "However, Mr. Caldwell is entitled to choose his representation, even if it's himself or someone acting on his behalf. Mr. Caldwell, do you consent to Ms. Harris speaking for you?" Caldwell, still reeling, looked at Evelyn. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Trust, perhaps, or desperation. "Yes, Your Honor," he said quietly. "I trust Evelyn." Bennett objected again, her voice sharp. "Your Honor, this is a mockery of the judicial process. Ms. Harris has no legal expertise. This risks turning a serious trial into a spectacle." "Noted," Judge Thompson said, "but the defendant has the right to proceed as he sees fit. Ms. Harris, you may speak on Mr. Caldwell's behalf, but you will adhere to courtroom rules and procedures. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Evelyn said, stepping forward to the defendant's table. She carried no briefcase, no legal pads, just herself. Caldwell's remaining legal team, a junior attorney named Mark Sullivan, looked at her with a mix of confusion and curiosity, but slid over to make room. Evelyn took a deep breath and faced the judge. "Your Honor, I've listened to every word of this trial. The prosecution says Mr. Caldwell stole money from his company, but they haven't shown the whole picture. I've seen how he runs his business, how he treats his employees, how he lives his life. He's not perfect, but he's not a thief. I can prove it." Bennett stood again, her tone dripping with condescension. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Ms. Harris's personal observations are irrelevant. This case is about financial records, not anecdotes from a housekeeper." "Maid," Evelyn corrected, her voice sharp but controlled. "I'm a maid, not a housekeeper. And I've got more than anecdotes. I've got evidence." The word evidence sent another ripple through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, and even Bennett paused, her confidence wavering for a moment. Judge Thompson leaned forward. "Ms. Harris, if you have evidence, you must present it properly. Do you have documents or witnesses to support your claims?" "I do," Evelyn said. "I've got records Mr. Caldwell kept in his home office, ones his lawyers didn't know about. I've got emails he sent to his accountants, trying to fix mistakes he found in the company's books. And I've got my own testimony about what I've seen and heard over the years. I can show he was trying to protect his company, not rob it." Caldwell looked at her, his eyes wide. "Evelyn, how do you—" he started, but she held up a hand, silencing him. "I've been in your house every day, Mr. Caldwell," she said. "I see everything. I hear everything. I know where you keep your files, and I know what's in them because I've dusted around them for years. You trusted me with your home. Now trust me with this." The courtroom was electric now, every eye on Evelyn. Judge Thompson granted a brief recess to allow Evelyn to gather her materials, which she said were stored at Caldwell's estate. Sullivan, the junior attorney, volunteered to assist her, clearly intrigued by this unexpected turn. During the recess, the media frenzy intensified. with reporters rushing to file stories about the maid who'd taken over a billionaire's defense. Social media exploded, with hashtag Courtroom Maid trending within hours. When the trial resumed, Evelyn returned with a small stack of documents. Printout of emails, handwritten notes, and financial ledgers she retrieved from Caldwell's home office. She presented them to the court, explaining each one with a clarity that surprised even the seasoned attorneys. The emails showed Caldwell questioning discrepancies in NextGen's financial reports, pushing his accountants to investigate. The ledgers, which Evelyn had found tucked away in a drawer, detailed transactions that contradicted the prosecution's narrative of embezzlement. They suggested Caldwell had been trying to uncover fraud within his own company, not perpetrating it. Bennett cross-examined Evelyn relentlessly, trying to discredit her. "Ms. Harris, you're not a financial expert," she said. "How can you claim to understand these documents?" "I don't need to be an expert to read what's in front of me," Evelyn replied. "I've spent years organizing Mr. Caldwell's life. I know how he thinks, how he works. These papers show he was trying to fix a problem, not create one." Evelyn's testimony went beyond the documents. She spoke about conversations she'd overheard, late-night calls where Caldwell argued with executives about financial irregularities. She described his stress, his sleepless nights, his determination to protect his employees' jobs. Her words were simple but powerful, painting a picture of a man who was flawed but not criminal. The jury, which had been stoic throughout the trial, was visibly engaged, some leaning forward, others taking notes. The prosecution tried to regain control, calling more witnesses to reinforce their case. But Evelyn's presence had shifted the dynamic. She didn't just defend Caldwell. She humanized him. She spoke of his small acts of kindness, paying for her son's medical bills, giving her extra time off when her mother was sick. These weren't the actions of a heartless thief, she argued, but of someone who cared about the people around him. As the trial progressed, Evelyn's role grew. Sullivan helped her navigate legal procedures, but it was her voice that carried the defense. She questioned witnesses, her lack of formal training offset by her sharp instincts and deep knowledge of Caldwell's life. When the prosecution presented a damning email chain, Evelyn pointed out inconsistencies in the dates, suggesting they'd been altered. When a whistleblower claimed Caldwell had ordered illegal transfers, Evelyn calmly asked about their own financial dealings, exposing biases that weakened their credibility. The turning point came when Evelyn called surprise witness, Caldwell's former accountant, a man named David Gwynn, who had left NextGen abruptly 2 years earlier. Gwynn testified that he'd warned Caldwell about suspicious transactions, but was pressured by other executives to stay silent. Evelyn had tracked him down, using contacts from Caldwell's household staff, and convinced him to come forward. Gwynn's testimony corroborated the documents Evelyn had presented, suggesting a conspiracy within NextGen to frame Caldwell. By the time closing arguments arrived, the courtroom was a different place. Evelyn delivered the defense's closing statement, her voice steady and commanding. "You've heard a lot about money and power in this trial," she said, "but this isn't just about numbers. It's about a man who built something from nothing, who trusted the wrong people, and who's paying the price for it. I'm not a lawyer, but I know right from wrong. And locking up Mr. Caldwell for something he didn't do, that's wrong." The jury deliberated for 2 days, an eternity for those waiting. When they returned, the foreman read the verdict, not guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting questions, spectators murmuring in disbelief. Caldwell sat back in his chair, tears in his eyes, and reached for Evelyn's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. She just nodded, her face calm but her eyes bright with emotion. The aftermath was chaotic. Evelyn became an overnight sensation, her face on every news outlet, her story shared across the world. She didn't seek the attention, returning to her job at Caldwell's estate despite offers to write books or appear on talk shows. Caldwell, cleared of charges, began rebuilding his company, but he never forgot what Evelyn had done. He set up a trust fund for her family and offered her a position as his personal advisor, though she declined, saying she was happy where she was. The trial changed the way people saw Evelyn, but it also changed the way they saw justice. It was a reminder that truth doesn't always come from those with titles or degrees. It can come from the person quietly working the background, the one who sees everything and knows more than anyone expects.